In today's video, I'm going to give an overview of all the techniques used to build this really cool scroll-driven demo. You'll see that as I scroll, this SVG stroke is being revealed with this tiny white ball at the front, and when it intersects these horizontal lines, bigger circles and those dates sort of pop in or pop out depending on which way I'm going. All of this is accomplished by combining GreenSock's ScrollTrigger, MotionPath, and DrawSVG plugins. I'll give you quick overviews of each and show you how we can tie them all together to create this cool effect with very little code. Before I get into it, quick shout out to moderator Mikel, who actually originated this demo, alright? He's a rock star in the GreenSock forums and does a lot to help people with animation problems. Here's one of his other fun demos that is also scroll driven using some of GreenSock's tools. He's very talented at solving complex problems and adding a little bit of humor and whimsy. Let's get going. So the first thing I want to do is really understand the SVG we're dealing with. In this demo, I want to strip some stuff out so that we can see exactly what all this SVG code means. This header element here, this heading 1, gives us all this height so that we can scroll down. We don't need that right now, so let me just select it and comment it out. I'm going to go into the CSS, select everything beneath the body, and again, comment it out. And in the JavaScript, I'm just going to select everything and comment it out. So now back in the HTML, we have just our SVG, and we have this little scroll trigger branding element, which we'll leave in there. Let me do a quick run just to see how those changes applied. All right, a little bit closer. We have the SVG in our viewport here, but the black background isn't helping us much. So in the CSS, I'm just going to go up to my body style, and let's just make the background a gray. We'll give it one more run, and things should start to look better, but you'll see we're missing these horizontal lines here, okay? If we go into the HTML, here we have these paths that have a class of line on them. So very quickly, I'm just going to create a rule for that. So I'll just say that anything with a class of .line is going to, for now, have a stroke of black. So if we run this, hopefully now we will see those lines that go across and everything is looking very nice, okay? So here's our SVG. And now that we can see everything, we can actually study the markup of it just a little bit, okay? So starting off, we have these paths here that have a class of line that we just turned on, and you'll see that they are these 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's one more 5 down there, okay? And then we have these text elements that have the dates 2018, 2019, and 2020. So boom, 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 that's how those are made. This path with a class of line is our curvy line that we're going to be revealing with DrawSVG, and we're going to have the ball follow it, okay? So moving on down, we have these circles. They all have a class of ball, and the first ball is this one right up here hanging out under our scroll trigger logo, okay? We're going to attach that literally to this path and have it move on down our screen on scroll. Balls 2, 3, and 4 are these ones right here, okay? Now the reason I commented out so much CSS is because some of these CSS styles have visibility hidden on them so that they can fade in with JavaScript code, all right? And so the text also has visibility hidden, all right? So that's why I'd gotten rid of so many styles. There actually is a line style already in here, and we'll activate all this stuff as we move on. But for right now, I really just wanted to see the SVG in its most sort of raw and natural state, if you will, okay? Nothing fancy, just the artwork that we get when this code here renders. Now that we understand how the SVG is set up, we're going to focus on making the SVG path grow. I'm talking about this white stroke right here that gets longer as I scroll down and gets shorter as I scroll back up. To control how that SVG stroke is revealed, we're going to use GreenSock's DrawSVG tool, which gives us precise control over revealing SVG strokes. There's a great video here that walks you through everything, but I'm going to use this demo to just show you some of the basics. We're not doing a deep dive into these tools today. I just want to show you how quickly we can get up and running with them. DrawSVG takes a complex string with 1 or 2 values. Right now with 100%, it draws the full SVG stroke. In the next example, we have 40%, 60%. And basically, when you see two parameters, you're controlling the beginning of the stroke and the end of the stroke. So the beginning is at 40% and the end is at 60%. In the next example, we go to 20, 350, where we're 20 units in for the beginning and 350 for the end of the stroke. In the next example, 50%, 50% puts the beginning and the end in the same point until you can't see any stroke at all. And of course, you're noticing how we can animate between any of these values. DrawSVG true is a shortcut for doing DrawSVG 100%. If we set the single value, again, it's just the end value that we're going to control, assuming a 0 for the beginning value. Let's get into our example. So in my demo, here I have some boilerplate JavaScript that registers ScrollTrigger, DrawSVG, and MotionPath plugin. DrawSVG is a bonus plugin for Club GreenSock members, but of course we can use it here on CodePen for free using this URL. We're setting up a default ease for all of our tweens because we want the path growing and the ball moving to all happen at exactly the same rate as we scroll the page. We don't want things running fast at the top and then slowing down at the bottom. Here we're building a timeline, and now the fun part. I'm just going to add a from tween on the line, and we're going to use DrawSVG 0 as the value that we're going to animate from. I'm going to give this tween a duration of 4 so that we have some time to see it. And now the next time I run, hopefully we're going to see this line grow at a constant rate, and I'm scrolling just to keep up with it, all right? This animation is happening totally independent from my scrolling. I'm just scrolling so that we can actually see the whole thing. But we have that ease none so that it's growing at a constant rate, which again will be helpful down the line. Next, we're going to use GreenSock's MotionPath plugin to get our dot to follow the stroke as it grows. In this demo here, we're seeing MotionPath plugin with the MotionPath helper, which is a super cool utility that makes it easy to actually edit the SVG path that you want your object to follow, all right? There's so much I could tell you about this, but there's loads of information on GreenSock's site. But for now, let's get into some MotionPath basics. So back in our file, I've actually gone ahead and I've registered GSDevTools, and I'm going to use it to control our main timeline. I think that'll help us moving forward for a little bit. While this line is growing here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a toTween on our .ball01. And what I want to do is tell MotionPath that we're going to have some configuration options here. So we're going to use the object syntax that allows us to specify things like the path that we want to follow. Well, the path happens to be our friend, the line. And once I do this, it's not going to work all that great, but I want to point out the reasons why. So here we have the DrawSVG function running, and then at the very end, what was that? You're going to see that this ball01 up here actually starts moving, and it doesn't look like it's necessarily following the exact path, all right? Now you may be wondering, well, we don't want it happening after the line draws, all right? So our big problem here is that this tween happens first and then this one. As all my Creative Coding Club students would know, we would need to put a position parameter on here to tell this tween here to start at the same time. And we'd also want to have the durations match, okay? So let's put a duration of 4 on here for now. So now the next time I run, the animation of the DrawSVG animation growing the line and the ball moving should be in sync, all right? And as I scrub back and forth here, you can see that, yes, they are synchronized. And if I scroll down a little bit, you know, we'll see them all sort of come down the page. But the issue here is that this ball does not seem to be attached to the actual path that I want to follow. And right now, this is all working exactly as it's supposed to, okay? When we specify path data for MotionPath, what happens is that that path data gets applied based on the start value or the natural position of the thing that's following the path. So imagine, if you will, if that curvy path that we have here was actually drawn from where that ball is, okay? If we want the ball to be literally aligned on the actual path, what we can do is specify a separate align property. And in this case, it makes sense that we align to that same object, which is the line. So let's give this a run. Look at that. It looks better, but maybe not the perfectest. All right, we can scroll down a little bit, and it's definitely following that line a bit better, but it's not centered the way that we want it to, okay? Now, the way this works is that by default, it uses the 0, 0 coordinate of this shape here. So let me just do a very quick inspect. And what I want to point out is that that very top left-hand corner of the circle is aligned perfectly with the center of that stroke and the end of the stroke. Well, what we can do is specify something called an align origin. And what that does is it works very similar to sort of a transform origin. And I'm going to put an align origin on here. And it's an array of sort of progress or percentage values. So I'm going to do 0.5 horizontally and 0.5 vertically is going to give us the center point, okay? So basically what that's going to do is offset the position of the circle so that the center is right exactly there, okay? So let's give this a runaroo, and now we should see that we have absolutely pixel perfect alignment and synchronization, okay? So now we have this circle directly at the end of that line, running perfectly in lockstep all the way down, as I love to say, the line, okay? Love my jokes. Now for the tricky part, we want to get these big circles and text to grow when our small circle intersects with each line, okay? So we're going to have circle and text pairs that we want to animate in the similar way. You'll see they sort of bounce up the same way as we meet, and of course they go backwards on the way back up. So the tricky part really is going to be how do we figure out the timing of when to trigger these assets animating in. Let me show you how we're going to do it. Alright, so in my file, I made one little addition to my CSS where I'm changing ball 1 to have a fill of red, which makes it very easy to see. And with a wider window, GSDevTools shows us the full UI. So the trick here is that I'm just going to manually scrub through using GSDevTools to the point where the red circle is pretty much fully eclipsed by that black circle, alright? So at this point in time, we're going to say it's, boom, 0.84 seconds. So I'll make a mental note of that, and then I'm going to scrub forward, and the next time we're going to want that circle to grow is right at a time of 1.36. I'll make a mental note of that as well, and then going on down the line, we're going to wait until the red line gets to this last line, boom, and we get 1.92. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug those numbers into a secondary timeline, and then we'll glue it all together. So let's take one little peek inside our HTML, and I just want to give you a little refresher that we have these three text elements here, 1, 2, and 3 for 2018, 2019, and 2020. Now, if you remember also, we have 4 balls, all right? So ball 2 is actually the one that's going to line up with text 1, because remember, ball 1 is the one that's following our path. So with that in mind, let's go over to our JavaScript, and I'm just going to do a little magic paste here, all right? This timeline here is called pulses. We have some defaults that are going to be applied to every tween, such as scale, transform, origin, and the ease. And here's where we have the fun part, all right? We're going to tell ball 2 and text 1 to use these settings at a time of 0.84. I hope you remembered that number. And the same thing for ball 3 and text 2, ball 4 and text 3. So we have a mini timeline here of 3 tweens that have very precise timing based on those values that we recorded for the position parameters. So let's make our window a little bit wider here so that we get our full GSDevTools. Let's run with this new timeline in here, and it should be running exactly the same pace as my GSDevTools one, okay? So that looked really pretty cool. Let's run one more time. Boom, boom. And I think we got the last one too. Now, you may notice though that we're not synchronizing these two timelines. Pulses is just sort of loosey-goosey, if you will, all right? It runs the first time, but it has nothing really to do with the timeline that's animating the stroke and the ball here. So to glue them together, if you will, inside of my main timeline here that has these 2 tweens, what I'm going to do is just do an add, and I'm going to add my pulses timeline at a time of 0. And so that's going to put it literally inside this timeline. That's controlled by GSDevTools. And so now the next time I run, these things should be fully synchronized together, all hooked up with GSDevTools. And now when I scrub all the way back, boom, you see that? How awesome is that? It is beautiful. Check out the text growing and that circle pulsing. All right, we can scrub back up and do the same thing for all 3. All right, isn't that groovy? You should see my smile right now. All right, before we add our last component of ScrollTrigger, let's restyle this a little bit so that it looks more like the actual demo, okay? And to do that, I'm going to get rid of some of my CSS that I had in here, and I'm going to activate all the original, okay? And there's a few things I want to point out here, that the text by default has a visibility of hidden, and so do the balls, all right? So that means that we're going to have to handle that somehow. So let's just do a quick run. And now you'll see my line growing, but we don't see any balls or any text, okay? So a quick fix for that, to get things all up to speed, is that these balls and text, when they're growing, we're going to also put in here an auto alpha of 1. That's going to turn their visibility to inherit and fade them to an opacity of 1. And let's just give that a run. And I know there's going to be one more thing I have to do as part of the cleanup. There we get. How good does that look? How good? Let's watch these all. I'm scrolling thinking something's going to happen. My goodness. All right, let's go back. There we go. So we have the nice pulse, but you may notice we're missing something here. That ball still has a visibility of hidden. So what I'm going to do in my main timeline is I'm just going to do a very quick .toTween on my friend ball01, and we're just going to also do an auto alpha of 1, and we're going to do a duration of, I don't know, 0.05. Now, even though that's really quick, it's still going to add some time to our timeline. So I want to make sure that this tween here is going to be starting at a time of 0, that it doesn't get pushed out of the way. Our next tween here starts at a time of 0, and that timeline that we added, okay? So let's just do a quick run, and everything should pretty much be all ready to go for our scrolling action, all right? We do see the ball on the bottom now. If we scroll all the way back up to the top and rewind, we will see that it fades in right there. That little fade, nice, okay? Oh, and one last thing about, I guess, the CSS was that the background was black in the original, okay? And what did I do? I made it gray. So we can just make it black. And now let's hook it up to the scroll position. I'm in love with the animation. Everything works great. And in the JavaScript, I'm just going to get rid of GSDevTools because we only want the scroll position to control this main timeline that has everything in it. So this timeline, I'm going to give it a config object, and I'm going to just paste in some ScrollTrigger code. If you've taken my class ScrollTrigger Express, you'll know exactly what this all means, all right? Our trigger is going to be the SVG element. Scrub true means that the position of the scroll bar is going to control the progress of the animation, and we're going to start this scrubbing when the top of the SVG reaches the center of the viewport, and we're going to end it when the bottom reaches the center. Let's just give this a quick run, and now when I scroll down, check it out. The top of the SVG is right around here. As soon as it reaches the center of the viewport, our scrolling and scrubbing works together, all right? How beautiful is that? I can scroll all the way down. So there you have it. We've combined ScrollTrigger, DrawSVG, and the MotionPath plugin, and all of these animations are controlled via scroll. I don't think you'd ever be able to create something like this with such little code and have it work so absolutely flawlessly, and of course, have the aid of a tool like GSDevTools throughout development. We saw how important that was to line up the timing and to test all of our code along the way. Do you want to gain mastery of the GreenSock animation platform through more videos like this? I'll show you all the tips and tricks I've learned over a decade of using GSAP, working at GreenSock, and teaching it to thousands of developers like you. My training is guaranteed to save you hours of frustration as you learn to add ultra-slick animations to all your web projects. Visit creativecodingclub.com today to unlock the world's most comprehensive GreenSock training, and let me help you discover the joy of animating with code.